first conversation we're going to have today is about enjoying marketing. As entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs, I can only encourage you to rethink what you might think marketing is all about. A lot of people think it's sales activity, producing leaflets, advertising, that sort of thing. But actually, marketing is more about thinking about your enterprise almost all the time, and thinking about the people that you're trying to help, and thinking about the people that might actually buy from you. And I've learned over the course of my career that the more you do this, the more you embrace marketing principles, the more that you immerse yourself in the different techniques that people are developing around marketing, it really builds your confidence as an entrepreneur. And it's about communicating with the people that you work with, it's about communicating with an audience that you're trying to build, but it's also, even more importantly, about listening to that audience and letting that influence your ideas and your decision making. So the first diagram, this is the curve of innovation. And I've put social in there because we're talking a lot about social innovation. Okay, and this is one of the natural shapes of nature, this shell. You can see it in a lot of different aspects of architecture and things like that. And yesterday we talked about designing businesses, and this is, again, a bit more design thinking, actually visualizing a process slightly differently. And it starts right in the core there of identifying a problem or an opportunity. And you might have a personal experience that's giving you cause to consider solving a problem or seeing an opportunity. You might be doing research to find problems or opportunities. There's lots of creative things you can do in that space to come up with a problem. And then the idea is that you should be using your creativity to come up with ideas. And this is a really open process. A lot of the ideas that you come up with, you can throw away. You can take half of them. You can take 10% of them. You can develop them further. The point of being an entrepreneur is that you spend quite a lot of time in this space, thinking about opportunities, problems, coming up with ideas, and creating this network around you that also helps you create ideas or share ideas with you. As an innovator, there's this phase about invention, that you actually do focus on this problem, you focus on an idea a little bit further, and you invent something that might solve that problem or might embrace that opportunity. And I've called this the social invention phase. So you might be in that phase now. You might think you're onto something. You might be playing with it. You might be developing some plans. You might use something like the business model canvas we used yesterday to give it some shape, to start thinking about it so that you can plan it, something more strategic. And there's lots of tools, SWOT analyses and pest analyses, all those business tools that you can use as part of trying to invent something. So in a way, like people invent things in the shed at the bottom of their garden. Social invention is very simple, very similar. You're trying to invent something. But so many people, though, think that that's it. They've invented something. They're convinced by it. And that they should be given some sort of free rein to be able to actually make money from it or be given the Nobel Peace Prize. And I'm not criticizing the people that win awards, but there's an awful lot of awards aimed at this sort of end of social innovation. Business plan competitions, social innovation competitions, and they're all extremely useful in terms of incentivizing people to be this creative. But the success comes from whether you can actually get it through this curve at the bottom. And so when you choose to come out of the invention phase, you're actually making a voyage into the marketplace. It's not going to be a closed circle of people anymore. You're opening up to criticism. You're opening up to people absolutely loving your idea or throwing it back in your face. This is what I said yesterday about, all that top bit, it's all theory. It's all design and art. Like an architect, he designs a building on a piece of paper, but it's only when they actually build it do they realize whether that window's actually going to fit. Can we actually build glass that big or whatever? So social innovation is taking your creation, your identification of the problem, your invention, into a marketplace, into a community. Now, you don't have to choose to do that as a social enterprise. You might have come up with a new way of teaching people things. You might have decided to write a book. You might have decided to do something else. But the purpose of our conversation is for those people that innovate and then choose to use a business to take it into market. That's where social enterprise comes in. So social entrepreneurship is still the same, that top bit, people that are about change, finding new solutions, but those that choose to actually bring it into a business context are social entrepreneurs that form social enterprises. But you can get social entrepreneurs in the government, you can get social entrepreneurs in businesses, you can get social entrepreneurs in schools, because to actually innovate it into the marketplace doesn't need a business, but it is an option for you. Okay? Now, if you're going to go into a market, that's why I'm encouraging you to really embrace and enjoy marketing. Because then you're actually saying, yeah, I might be an expert, I might have come up with a unique idea, a unique invention, but actually I need to think about the other types of success people have had when they've entered other markets and actually learn from them. Now, if you prove yourself and you've really innovated, then you've got this choice to scale it up. You've operated for 3 years, you've broken even, you're making some profits, people like what you're doing, you've tweaked it, you know it works, you now want to grow it across Cyprus, or you want to grow it across the Mediterranean region. And there's all kinds of other creative ways you can scale it. Selling the idea, growing it yourself, franchising it, sharing it with other people, educating other people. And the idea is you're aiming for that big bang change of a new social or economic norm. You know, that you've changed it. Think about the Googles of the world, the Apples, but also when people talk about, you know, the inventions like inventing the wheel. It's that stage is when it's taken for granted. Okay, so some of the social enterprises that I've worked with, some of the stories that we'll share today, they're on the verge of creating new social and economic norms. Profit is going to pay for you to get to that ultimate goal. And actually that's the biggest thing you've got in common with big businesses, is you have to respect some of the big businesses that have made a lot of money they're just as much a fabric of our society as today. The people that make mobile phones, the people that make computers, none of them did it particularly for social reasons, but they've created a new social norm, which I think is really positive. So you can think about where you are on this curve. So these are like five of the key lessons that I've learned, which pointed me more back towards knowing more about marketing strategically. So as I was pursuing this, trying to get it out into the market, trying to innovate, I've realized that I've missed something. I didn't spend enough time looking for risks, looking for opportunities, looking for partners, and I've missed something because I didn't analyze it. And the response has either been that the company has struggled or suffered in some way, or I've actually caught it early enough that I've been able to go back, analyze it, and do a quick fix. But there's a feeling that you'll experience, I missed something. Take it on the chin. Don't try and fight it. My analysis has and can regularly be inaccurate. You know, and we spend a lot of time doing business plans, we spend a lot of time reading, we spend a lot of time in our own head, a lot of time listening to us saying we're right. You've got to be aware that sometimes you might get it wrong. So strategic marketing can help you actually make sure that you're getting much more objective data coming in so that your analysis is increasingly accurate. Okay? Assumptions, and therefore assuming wrong. All of your business plans, all of your activities will be based on things that you've assumed are going to work a certain way. And we can get an awful lot of confidence in those things. And that confidence can be shattered when we realise that Greek Cypriots won't behave that way. Turkish Cypriots won't behave that way. Because of our prejudices, because of our market research maybe. We're building up on assumptions all the time. You can't get too precious about them. You've got to be able to say, I just assumed wrong. This is now a fact. How does the business have to change? Go back to what I said before. It's always about change. And this, one of the main things that I've discovered, which will absolutely pull the rest of your hair out if you haven't started to lose it like me, is customers behaving differently than you thought they would. You know, even differently than they said they would, because you're dealing with humans. And the other one, which I think I've learned really as I've started to look more at other social enterprises, is that they miss the value that their competitors create. They don't respect their competitors. They think they're better, and they might be. But if you miss a competitor being good at something, then it's highly likely they're going to be, they're going to be able to compete with you effectively. So actually, competitive analysis, respecting the people around you, how they work, is really important. It's really important to remain quite positive about them. Not to think these guys don't know what they're doing. It colours your whole vision to working with them, and you might miss something. You might actually miss what they're really good at. The connections they have, for example. The fact they're in the right place at the right time. It's a strength, even if it really does your head in. So 70% of your time as an entrepreneur will probably be spent analysing situations, thinking deep in your organisation, which the majority of people don't spend 70% of their time doing this. So you'll find it difficult to socialise with other people who aren't constantly doing this sort of thing. But about 70% of your time will be spent analysing. And when you grow a team, you will get that feedback from your team. What are you doing? I'm here doing stuff. I'm here at the coalface. Because they're not spending 70% of the time analysing, thinking strategically. And then 20% of your time should be planning what to do quite quickly, based on the fact that you spent most of your time analysing, and 10% actually doing it. And being very quick to feed that back in to the 70% of the time that you're doing it. Now, I'm not saying that's all at your desk. That's done on planes, it's done in bars, it's done reading, it's done talking. But your brain must always be switched on to have I just picked up something that I need to remember. You'll find most entrepreneurs carry notebooks around, for example, constantly scribbling stuff down because you just never know when it's going to be of use to you. It also means expanding your sources of information. Google is a great facility of actually having it do a daily search on key topics and send you a synopsis of news on the topics you're interested in, so that you can actually tweet things. Remember what I said about sharing and networking, but actually almost build up your own news feeds from your whole industry, so that you stay up to date with opportunities. You see what other people are saying about the same topics. You have to become quite a geek about this. But it's because it empowers you. You feel like you're not missing something. You feel like you're feeding yourself. So one of the key tools, we looked at it yesterday, was the business model canvas. Okay, it's a really good tool to produce ideas quickly, to give you a structure for the type of thinking you have to be doing, the type of marketing thinking. All of that right-hand side leads to marketing strategy, because you're having thoughts about your customers, the type of relationship you need with them, how much money you're going to be able to generate from creating value. All about this value proposition. It can even give you an idea about what value proposition you should be providing. Okay, so it's a very good marketing tool. And this is an example, you asked for one yesterday, about how companies use the business model canvas. And it also links to what we talked to yesterday about technology. Because when I looked at this business model canvas, being a real fan of Lego when I was a child, and actually I would still play with it now, if they'd have brought that out when I was a child, I would have just, that was it. My parents would never have seen me again. I would have been, basically what it is Lego fans can actually produce kits online to their own design and then press send, and the bricks arrive in the post. So instead of the Lego company having to do all of the design, all of the thought about what people wanted, they empowered their customers. And then through a community online, if it's successful, they'll produce it as a kit. But also, if it's only 3 people in the whole world want a great big pink dinosaur, those 3 people can have it. Now, a key resource box is interesting. Lego still don't know how to respond to this sort of consumer empowerment. So they're still working out how to really resource this. But they've made their customers into their key partners, because there are some geeks out there that will spend all day doing this, like I would have done. It's also a really good way of selling, small revenues, but potentially from large numbers of customer designed items. They might sell 1 or 2 of them each, but there might be 10,000 people designing something at any time. And the thing is about technology is that I couldn't have had that when I was 10. Because we didn't have the internet.
Yeah.
I had a computer, but it couldn't have done that. You know, so this shows you that sometimes technology is actually ahead of where you could be. But the Business Model Canvas is a great tool for developing a new product, you know, from a marketing perspective. Marketing, real marketing, is always about storytelling. It's about telling stories to yourself, and then it's about being able to tell stories with the people that you need to interest in your business. And the stories are about the product that you're trying to offer, where it's going to be available, how much it is, and promoting it. Now, one of the things I think Cyprus can really improve on across the whole economy, from just my humble experience, is the promotion side of things. You know, I have learned that it is almost possible to get anything here. Anything made, niche shops, this, you know, film community that's available. But why in the 21st century should the consumer have to search for it? And there are so many cool places that open, and you find out about them so late that by the time you actually want to become loyal to them, they've gone bust. Because their promotion is a few leaflets on lampposts. It's telling their friends, or there's no strategic approach to, there are 1 million people in this place. How many of them do I actually need to reach for this thing to keep working? And how much do I know about them so I can tell them a story? Tell them a story, engage them, very like the networking. You're networking in your customers. So I think at least you should be reaching your customer halfway. You should have told them enough to intrigue them enough to come the other way. So strategic marketing is about storytelling. And if you can tell a good story, you're halfway there. It is not about selling and advertising, it's about stories. Now yesterday, one of the stories that we talked about was the business case. And literally on a page, you should be able to tell this story. This is the problem I found, or the opportunity. This is how the market is doing, what it's doing about it. And this is where the market is going from my research and analysis. And this is my unique position within this market. It can be one page and you've already hooked a number of stakeholders in to want to go into more detail. You probably have seen this before. It's a classic strategic tool called Pestle, where you look at the world outside you through a number of different lenses. This is to stop you making your own conclusions, stop your own prejudices, but to try and sort of codify the world into lenses of what's happening out there politically, what's happening out there economically, how is society changing, where's technology going, what's the legal environment like, what's the environment like, i.e. we put that in now very much because we are all now much more conscious about the environment. Now I see many business plans or chief executives or entrepreneur answer the first column, and they produce like an essay which shows that they've had a look at the world, and they miss just the really simple next step of asking why. Why is that a threat, or why is that an opportunity? You know, literally this analysis that we're talking about, spending 70% of the time on, can be as simple as asking why, being inquisitive. Now let me give you an example. In Beirut, there is a new social enterprise growing. And they've done this. But they also did the why. Okay? So they know that politically, Lebanon is an unstable place. They are surrounded by a powder keg of instability. Anything could happen. War is already breaking out. They have over 1 million refugees in their country. It's 20% of the population. Okay? That is enough for many people to pack up and move out. Okay? So you would put that as a threat, because they might bomb you, because you don't know anything about these refugees. It's a threat. The economy is being affected by that. You know, there's new money in the economy, there's new pressures on the economy, all those kind of things. Society's under pressure from it, etc. Threats, yes. Are there any opportunities? What they saw was an opportunity to build a digital newsroom on their facilities, on their site. 40 screens, 40 news feeds from around the world, a high-capacity broadband connection, lots of plugs and sockets in the wall, and launch it as a press cafe. They turned a very negative situation into the coolest, most efficient place for journalists to base themselves, to socialise with each other, not in a hotel lobby, surrounded by other people that are professionals, other freelancers, to be able to get feeds from all over the world, recharge their phones, recharge their cameras, go up on the roof and beam with Skype out to where they need to be. And they're already receiving interest, new revenue streams. Totally unique. Because no one else thought about that first. Because no one else said, are any of these threats an opportunity? They asked why. Another organisation that I worked with, the chief executive grew the social enterprise from about £300,000 a year to 1.2 million in about 3 years. He did really well. Wasn't a particularly strategic approach, but he put his heart and soul into it. But as he grew, he got more and more insight, more and more sources of information that were telling him something wasn't quite right. Why were they doing it the way they were doing it? They'd seen that, in his case, it was about enabling young disabled people to access leisure facilities. But he was getting less and less sort of passionate about providing support to young people, because he was asking the question, why do we have to do this? Society might be like this, but it should change. He came up with a model, a completely different business model, which would actually say, why aren't we providing services to the leisure providers? Instead of helping lots and lots of disabled people and needing lots and lots of funding for that, and helping a much smaller number than we're happy with, if we could actually help a leisure centre, a cinema, another leisure venue, learn about disability, learn about the adaptations that they could make, train the staff, we could change the whole thing in 3 months. And every disabled child in that town wouldn't have a barrier. The thing is, what he'd done is work out a way of intervening for less time, generate more revenue, and achieving more impact. But because of this balance of 70%, 20%, 10%, and he was growing the business, he was spending most of his time in the action bit. Maybe 20% of his time thinking. Therefore, not much time planning. He was hands-on, and he did that for too long, and the organisation went bust. Now, I'm not saying that he could have saved it, but if he'd have actually taken a risk on his idea earlier, they might have actually changed the business, and they could be growing in another avenue. All because you must ask, why is this an opportunity or a threat? Okay? Now, the other thing as well with this, I really want to encourage you to do, because we are on an island here, but by really opening your mind and letting in the whole global sources of information, there is no reason, there is no barrier at all, in fact, why some international solutions can't be born here in Cyprus. Do you know what I mean? A solar-powered desalination portable unit could be born on an island with lots of sun, surrounded by the sea. It's got everything it needs. It just lacks the entrepreneur, the technical network, or whatever. So I think one of the things that I've seen in Cyprus when people have been considering social entrepreneurship is that they've only looked at the Cypriot pool of issues to try and solve. Actually, now it's global. And there are many things that Cyprus has which could actually nurture global ideas. So just don't limit yourself. This is a very simple tool for looking at your competitors and working out what your unique position might be. Okay? So very simply, you have your list of competitors and you work out 2 things that make them different. So say we're all going to go out for lunch, okay, and we look at all our lunch options and we think about a high and a low. Okay, so maybe high cost, low cost, high speed, low speed. And then you group those competitors together like this. So that group at the bottom would be the ones that, you know, are quite quick but not very expensive. And this would be ones that are expensive and very quick. Okay? And then you know where your competitors are. And quite simply, you can then choose where your USP could be. Okay? Now this is useful for 3 reasons. The first is if you choose to compete in one of those bubbles, you know very clearly that your marketing has to be focused on competing against the rest of the market. And so if you're a social enterprise, just because you're a social enterprise, it's probably not going to be enough for people to come to you. You're going to have to be doing something better than your competitors. You might see somewhere where there's just a gap in the market. So you can change some of your plans, or you can develop your business to fit that gap for where you're going to make most of your money. And in 2005, there's a book produced called Blue Ocean Strategy. So think about the big wide ocean. And what they were saying is you can make your competitors irrelevant if you choose an entirely new market where there's no one there. Really bold. And the example that people use most is Cirque du Soleil. So how do you reinvent a circus? How do you take away the animals? Is it just going to be gymnasts then? But what they did was they completely took it out and mixed dance, opera and circus together. Defined a whole new market for themselves, and the competitors then play catch up. So this is one of the tools that we use quite regularly with clients when they don't know where they fit in the marketplace or where they could fit. And I did it with a client recently, and they were a new social enterprise. They specialise in helping people who have been affected by sensory impairment. So maybe they've had a car crash and they've lost their hearing or their sight, and they specialise in enabling that person to adapt and their family to adapt so that they can have as normal a life as possible, an enjoyable life as possible. And they looked at the rest of the competition for the first time. They had a lot of assumptions about the competition which were proved wrong. And then they chose independently to be high quality and highly effective and preventative. As a result, they knew they were going to be the most expensive people in the marketplace. So they were then very conscious that their marketing, their story, had to convince people they were worth that premium. But what they didn't do was choose to become the cheapest and then still try and be the best, for example. This slide is one of two, which is about me trying to encourage you to empathise with all your stakeholders and customers, stepping out of your own opinion and into their lives. This is more than customer segmentation. This is actually really trying to build up characters about how people live their lives, grouping them together that way. This is one tool, this is another. So I asked actually for this to be done, for these exercises, because I've never met any of you before. And I have to say that Young Youth Power were able to describe characters that I have probably seen in this room. So it really helped me know who I was going to actually be talking to. But this is about really, instead of thinking, how do I sell to the person? Just put that to one side and trying to really go into depth about who these people are. What do they think and feel on a daily basis? How can that change how you would approach them? What do they see on a daily basis? What's staring them in the face? What are the competitors putting in front of them? What are they hearing at home, at school, at work from the most influential people in their lives? What do they say and do? How do they represent those feelings, those values and beliefs? What are the pains in their life? What's actually causing them most issues? What needs do they have? And what things are they actually wanting to gain from life? What are the things they enjoy? With these sorts of insights, you can really start to spin your business models on their head. You know, by empathizing with Lego users, for example, what we love doing is having all of the pieces available. You know, one of our biggest pains is running out of a certain piece. They took, by that insight, they've taken that barrier away by putting it online. You know, so these sorts of tools can be great for empathizing with your staff, for empathizing with stakeholders, customer groups, even audiences that you're going to be presenting to. You know, and I've watched a group of young people use this for half an hour and then produce a business model canvas, and from total scratch, and recommend really quite cool products for people they've only just met a few days before. If you spend quality time being creative in the shoes of the people that you're actually trying to help, or the people you're trying to make money from. Okay? So I used this recently with a group of maybe 20 established social businesses. All of them will have been in business for about 10 years. Okay? And I asked them to use this in groups to map their main customer. Two things were really quite surprising. All 4 groups mapped a very similar individual, which shows the power of the tool, that actually you can actually almost map identical people if you've got the same inputs. The second thing was that person was not a very positive person. They described someone very weak, very depressed, very powerless, almost entirely female, which was interesting. This person was not someone that you'd necessarily want to share a coffee with, let alone do business with. When I asked them to think about would they have mapped somebody if they'd just done that 45-year-old woman or 35-year-old woman, they came up with something very positive. And they started to see the mismatch between the real person and the persona that they were putting onto their main customer. A customer that actually they didn't have much respect for, that actually they might have even started to hate a little bit, that was coming, they could start to see it coming through. And without fail, all of them took a big deep breath and thought, is this the reason why we're losing business? Because we no longer actually can empathise with our customer. And I've had some feedback from that group that 2 of them went away and did this in the group and have changed their behaviour, and they said within weeks the conversation has changed with our main customer. They feel we're listening to them, they feel that we're in business again together. And I said to them, maybe you should then ask them to do this exercise about you and see how far apart you've actually come. So it's a really powerful tool, and I really think you can, again, add it to your creative toolbox.
I think this is one of the biggest problems in Cyprus in particular, that people don't think enough about their customer. They don't have like target audience centered strategies, but have sort of, I forget the technical terms now. They tend to think more of their business as the center of their actual business instead of the client. And that's why people also, businesses and entrepreneurs also miss out on promotion. That's why you never hear of things, because they're never actually concerned with communicating with their customers, let alone empathizing. So yeah, this is a big problem solver, I think, for that Cyprus needs. Yeah.
I think it can be useful in a wide range of things. I've heard a lot as I've been in Cyprus. That's very Cypriot. That's Cypriot. That's how we do things here, and they're very rarely positive. Yes. Whereas I love the place, and in a way, my journeys here have been about mapping the people. And if I mapped to Cypriot, I'd probably come up with a much more positive map than some Cypriots would.
Yeah.
What's that about? And so, as an entrepreneur, if you're spending a lot of your 70% thinking about your customer in a positive way, thinking about their strengths, their weaknesses, and actually how you can interact with them, it's extremely empowering when you then go to your team and say, I want to change something.
Yeah.
And remember what I said about the reason why. This is why. I really think our customers are having trouble with this, actually. And the team will understand. You're then able to communicate with your team a real case for change.
But it's also a huge positive step getting out of the box, of your business-centered box, and thinking as a client-centered entity. Thinking that you actually have to sell something, for example, to people.
And one of the criticisms of big businesses, and this is a generalization, but there are big businesses that do have this problem, is that as they grow, the further the leader, the entrepreneur, the business leader gets away from the front line, they have a much higher opinion of how well the company's doing than those that work on the front line, because they are the ones that are empathizing most closely with the customer. If you're in a hotel and the service is very bad, the receptionist knows the service is bad because she is seeing it on a day-to-day basis, okay? And the concierge sees it on a day-to-day basis. If he is disempowered to actually feed that back in, the chief executive sat in New York can be saying, yeah, our hotels are great, look at them, they're beautiful. And I can find the 3 people that will say they're excellent, so I'm happy. So actually this is a way of you actually bridging across your organisation. And if you start it from small and you start it as an individual, you can actually get that in as a culture, as a habit, so it will grow with you, rather than spend, as these companies then do, tens of thousands of pounds a day bringing in consultants to try and re-inject some humanity into their organisations.
What these boxes are saying, not boxes, what is behind the stickers?
Behind them, the first one says, what does the person think and feel? You know, what occupies their mind, what worries do they have, what aspirations do they have? The one on the left is, what does she hear? What does her boss say to her? What people that influence her, what are they telling her? What's her own mind saying to her? Okay. The one on the right is, what does she see? What do her friends look like? What's the market offering her? What's the kind of, when she looks out on the world, what's being reflected back at her? The bottom is, what does she say and do? You know, which will be influenced by these things. Quite often, this is one of the reasons why market research can be inaccurate. What people say is not necessarily what they think. Often what people say is what they think they should say. So empathizing means you can look at contradictions and actually say, this person will think that they have got real potential, but they'll say they don't, because the influences in their life tell them they don't, and they don't have any role models to see, for example.
But this could be as well good feedback what employers think about organization and services. I mean, because it's amazing when you put someone to think like someone else, they are free to tell things.
Yeah.
So I guess that this can be used for both sides.
Yeah.
Customers and services that you are providing, how you see it, how enthusiastic you are. Maybe they are describing their business from perspective of everyday struggle being there and delivering that service.
All this has real power when used in reverse. And the bottom line on this is about what's the person gaining and what are they losing from that. With that kind of insight into people and building that into your customer segmentation, and that, then you can start to see, you know, actually we think we're actually providing this value, but actually it's this value that we should be providing. That's how we're going to market what we're trying to do. You know, one of the things I found really interesting when I worked for government, I worked as an entrepreneur inside local government. So that meant that it wasn't always about social enterprise, it was always about social change. And we worked with two teams. One was responsible for fostering children. So that was temporary homes for children that needed them. And the other team was responsible for adopting children. I asked both teams whether they thought they provided a service to parents. And neither of them did. They saw exclusively, we help children. Through this exercise and business modelling, as we talked about them maybe running as a social enterprise, there was like an epiphany to them. Is the reason why it takes in England 18 months to adopt a child because the people think the main customer is the child? They're very important. But if you were to actually empathise and realise that the parents are one of your customers, because you're giving them the ability to have children, then that might change everything in your business. And that was really powerful for them, because they realised that was why they were being so heavy on the parents and assuming that they needed to be so heavily vetted, because they only looked to the child. So that's what I say when I go back to that first slide. You can miss things.